Hey guys, welcome into the Bear With Us podcast. I'm Jack. He is Frank. I've made my glorious return when we did our post game pod, and I don't plan on going anywhere, Frank. So I'm back. I'm back for the foreseeable future. I can never say that word right. Foreseeable future. A tough one. I don't know why. But anyways, I'm back. We have a lot to discuss, so we're just kind of get into it. If you want to hear our Bears Vikings thoughts, we already did that on our post game pod. I don't know, Frank. I was left more with disappointment than anger. Really, it wasn't one of I think back to those losses at the end of last year, right? Where even not even that end, but like any time they lost, and you and I were just pissed, and we got a ton of views because everybody was like, "Ooh, Bears fans who are mad. Let's watch that." I wasn't mad after that game. I was just disappointed more than anything because it took away. It was such a weird ending to a game, and we didn't really get to see what we wanted to see from it, whether it being a good outcome or a bad outcome. It just kind of, it almost felt like a tie, right? Like you're kind of just like, did we win? Did we lose? I don't really know. Are you still angry about the game? Is there anything else that you really wanted to talk about before we sort of move on to week 6 and some other touch points?
No, I didn't have any more parting thoughts on the game. I think we said all that needed to be said in that post game wrap up, the post game what do we call them, reactions. But just like you said, that's really what I left with. Like, and I'm okay. I'm okay with the feeling of disappointment because to me, the disappointment comes from having hope. Like there was hope in that game. It was like, holy shit, Justin's looking good. Offense is looking better. This is a fun second half. It was checking off all the boxes of what we wanted to see this year. And it gave us hope that we could win that game or Justin go down and tie the game. But the anger, and that's what I wanted to distinguish after you said that, and then we can sort of get into what we wanted to talk about. But the anger usually comes from being unwatchable. That's not acceptable to me anymore. I'm not accepting this team being unwatchable. What the consequence to the team is going to be is probably nothing. But I don't know why I say it's unacceptable. But that's when we get angry, when it's like, what are we watching right now? Like you just like you harken back to the end of the Nagy days, just an undisciplined, ugly team to watch, no identity, a team with a young quarterback that had a coaching staff that was dead in the water. It just felt so meaningless.
Right.
So I'm okay with disappointing losses if it means progress for this team and an identity being formed. And again, I said this a million times, I'll continue to say it, is the number one thing is just being fun. And that was a fucking fun game. So I will always take that.
Yeah, I think most Bears fans would agree with you that it was a fun, enjoyable game, unexpectedly too. Because let's not just erase what happened in the first half. People were very angry, including yourself and myself as well. That was a brutal first half. I think if anything, the anger I felt was, if I felt anger at all, it was that a guy like Amir Smith-Marset should never be put in a position like that because he's just not good enough. The Bears had every opportunity to build depth in the offseason, whether that's drafting, using one of their 2 second-round picks to draft a receiver like you and I had expected them to, or if that's to sign a receiver in the offseason. And I think that was one of those things. But again, that's where it comes into our watch guide. And it really is a good reminder that this team is not built to win right now. They're not built to win 10 plus games, go to the playoffs, and be done with it, right? They're built to not lose, but just to see what pieces they have for the future while also building up some potential compensation in draft picks and things like that. So I think that's all there is to say about really that game. But I think it's a good segue, Frank, into one of the bigger things to happen after this week, and that was the firing of Matt Rhule. It's something that you and I had thought could have happened at the end of last year. He had been on our hot seats since last year as well when we did our hot seats for coaches. I think we were both kind of surprised that Matt Rhule made it another year. And really the only reason to me is how much money he was making.
Yeah.
It's hard to justify. I don't understand how he got that contract in the first place. That never made sense to me at all. But that offense was just bad. And his decision to get Sam Darnold, then Baker Mayfield. It just didn't work out. But what I wanted to talk about was with his removal, right? A lot of rumors are that teams have started reaching out for veterans. They want to start shedding some bigger contracts to maybe start a potential rebuild in Carolina. And one name that I thought makes a ton of sense for the Chicago Bears is DJ Moore. Very underrated receiver in Carolina. He was not being used effectively at all this year. I think he makes a ton of sense for the Bears to target and go get use maybe a middle round draft pick. It just makes sense. Frank, what are your thoughts on potentially getting DJ Moore, and do you think it's now is the right time to do that for the Chicago Bears?
I would be all in on DJ Moore. That was the one thing you've already touched on a little bit. When it comes to disappointment, and we're gonna feel it more than just than we did against the Vikings, where it's like, why is this receiver trying to make this play right now? We should have someone better here. And it was something that me and you both touched on in the offseason. While we completely understand this is a rebuild or a retool or whatever, part of this rebuild or retool is already in place, meaning we have the young quarterback on a rookie contract. So now you have to invest in him. And I think what that would have looked like or should have looked like was drafting. If it was up to me, I would have gotten both George Pickens and Alec Pierce in the second round over the secondary pieces that we got. Because you want to surround him with talent to further just dispel any sort of excuses that there could be as whether or not this is the guy. And we said this in the offseason. I don't want to, make it seem like we're, rewriting history or changing our thoughts. We did say that we would be okay with the corner, but we were very explicit about hating a safety pick if that was going to be a pick. And it was, and we were pissed on this podcast. We wanted a receiver. We wanted multiple receivers in the offseason, especially in the draft. Like, free agent wise, like DJ Chark, I wasn't too concerned with that. I say all that to say, Justin is showing you more strides. Get him someone here. I'm all in on DJ Moore. He's young. DJ Moore is like 24, 25. So I know he just signed his 4-year deal, whatever it was, 4 or 5-year deal with the Panthers. So now he's locked up. We have cap space. We can move things around for year one to load it in year 2 or just spread it out more. Whatever you have to do, you do it. Because it's very clear, while we're not a playoff team, but you sort of cap the ceiling of Justin Fields with the talent that you have around him. Like, there's only so much that he can do, or that there's only so much that he can progress with this type of talent around him. Because what you don't want to happen, I remember explicitly seeing this in the Jay Cutler era. And again, say what you will about Jay, whatever, but he was a young quarterback. He was going into year 4 when he came to the Bears. He wasn't a finished product yet. And he had always dealt with bad offensive lines, especially in Chicago. And there were years when he had a good offensive line, and people would break down the film and they would say, look, he's bailing early, or he's becoming a one-read guy because he created this bad habit of he's so used to not having time in the pocket that he's not going through his reads correct, even though he knows how to go through his reads. It's these bad habits that you reinforce with young guys that sometimes they can't break. And I think it's the same thing with Justin Fields. Like, I want him to feel confident enough to throw a receiver open. Maybe he's not really open, but you're putting it in the window where really only he can catch it. But if these guys continuously drop the ball, and I would hope that someone's in Justin's ear saying, like, look, keep making that throw. That was perfect. It doesn't matter if Pettis dropped the ball. But I feel like it's like human nature to be like, well, if I know he can't make that play, I'm just not going to do it. You know what I mean? And that can create a bad. I don't want that. I don't want that for Justin. I want him to be confident out there. I want him to continue to make those strides and at least have faith in the weapons that are around him. Because realistically, he probably only has faith in Kmet and Mooney right now. Who else has like made a play for him? You know what I mean? Monty a little bit with those throws in the flat. So yeah, I know that was long-winded, and my apologies for that. But I say all that to say I would go as high as a second-round pick to get DJ Moore. You're talking about a young guy with a team-friendly contract.
Yeah.
That has put up multiple thousand. He has 3 1,000-yard seasons with poor quarterback play. Who has been his best quarterback? Teddy Bridgewater?
Teddy Bridgewater, probably.
And that's no disrespect to Teddy. I love Teddy too, Gloves. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's probably the best backup, and he would be, a top 25-ish, top 20 quarterback. He's a good quarterback, but he hasn't had elite talent throwing him the football. Like, get him in here. I'm all in on DJ Moore. I don't know if you feel any differently, but I would if people think a second's an overpay, I'm firmly saying I'm okay with overpaying to get him because I think he's a very good receiver.
I honestly don't even think you need to give a second round pick for him. I would be for it. I wouldn't be necessarily angry about it, but I really don't. I mean, you saw guys like DeAndre Hopkins going for a second, things like that.
That's fair.
These guys, with the contract, if the Bears are offering to take the entire contract, that'll probably limit the amount of compensation you'll have to give, maybe a fourth or a fifth round pick. You're looking for guys like DJ Moore at that point in those rounds. Why not go get a guy has produced in this league and could be a really good fit in this offense? I mean, you're absolutely right, Frank. One of the things that you and I had talked about in the offseason, so many Bears fans were calling for, the number one wide receiver and things like that. And I don't necessarily think that Justin Fields needs a number one wide receiver to develop. It would obviously be great to have. You look at Kyler Murray's development with DeAndre Hopkins, or how much Jalen Hurts, how much better he looks with a guy like A.J. Brown, or Josh Allen when he got Stephon Diggs. Like, he just took off because you have such talent. But on the flip side, you don't need to have something like that. But it helps your development to have guys who can catch the ball. And Dante Pettis can't be running out there dropping footballs left and right. That's just in his MO, right? And you're so shallow at the spot. It's like a boon to get N'Keal Harry back. And he is a guy who hasn't done anything in the league. And you and I are both like, all right, here we go. Like that. He should be wide receiver 4 at the fucking best, but he might be wide receiver 2 at this point, just because of how limited they are at that spot. So if you have an opportunity to get a guy who's produced in this league, maybe not a wide receiver 1, right? Maybe not a dominant wide receiver in the league, but a guy who's produced and can prove to be a good, valuable addition right now, right this second, you have to see what it costs. And if it's not something outrageous, you have to do it. I think they have the space, like you said, cap space wise. They have the compensation to do it, draft pick wise. I say go out and do it. I think it makes a ton of sense.
Well, and I also think, though, Jack, unless the plan is to draft receivers early, and even if that's the case, that doesn't mean don't get DJ Moore. Because I don't know if he probably isn't a true wide receiver 1. But you pair that type of speed with him and Darnell Mooney with a potential number 1 pick next year, not the number 1 overall, but a first round pick next year at receiver. Think of like a Drake London prototype. I mean, that's a fucking receiver room right there. That's a whole turnaround. So, yeah, I don't see what would be part of our plan that would make us not pursue DJ Moore if he is indeed available. We're saying all this as if the Panthers were like, "Hey guys, come and get him." We don't know if he is available, but in the scenario that he is, we need to be the first ones on the phone and see what the hell the price is, because I can't imagine they would be asking for a first. And you're probably right. Maybe they don't even ask for a second, but a third or a fourth, or even like a third and a fourth and fifth swap or something like that. Like, that's not outrageous to pay for someone who's produced in this league.
And it's not something that's unfounded either. We've seen guys that are bigger names go for less compensation in season, especially right before the trade block too. Like, I think now is the perfect opportunity to do it. I just think it makes all the sense in the world. And like you said, if you get DJ Moore, that's less than you have to do in the offseason, right? That's less, you don't have to draft 2 receivers in the first and second round. You can maybe do it in the second round if you really, like a pass rusher or an offensive lineman in the first. It gives you more options.
I'm also thinking, though, Jack, let's say the avenue is trade for a receiver. Who would be a potential trade? You know what I mean? Like, he's really the only one as it stands right now, because the AJ Brown situation was so left field I mean, that escalated so fast. So I say that to say you can't bank on that. Who is a young receiver that is going into year 3 or 4 that would want an extension, that has the potential to be disgruntled in negotiation? That list is from year to year, or even every 5 years, is so small.
And you saw it with Debo. Right, you saw it with Debo. Everyone thought he was going to be an easy trade candidate, and he ends up staying and signing. You can't just expect guys who maybe you see the free agent. with all the tags you can do now, with all that stuff, like you can't ever just assume that a guy who's listed as a free agent is going to be a free agent. You have to sometimes get a little bit aggressive. We haven't really seen that from Ryan Poles yet, right? We haven't seen him being aggressive yet. So I'm curious to see when that happens. And I think DJ Moore makes a lot of sense for this team. Frank, I know that you wanted to touch on the team as it currently stands. We're about 5 games in. I think they're about sort of where we expected them to be. I think maybe they could have won a game here or there that we expected them to, but overall 2-3 is not the worst place to be right now. But I think it now is kind of a good time to sort of check in and sort of look exactly where this team is at. And sort of talk about guys that we think could be key players moving forward. I think there's some obvious ones. Justin Fields, Darnell Mooney. I think those are guys that, just make a ton of sense. But are there any other players that, sort of stood out to you so far in this young season that you really look at and you can say, you know what, I think we can build around these guys?
Yeah. It's funny because it dawned on me that a big part of what we want this season to be is building that identity. And with that, you need cornerstone pieces, that to move forward with. And it just made me realize, like, I don't think we have that many. Like you said, you named the obvious ones. You named Justin, you named Darnell, probably Braxton Jones, but even then, he's having a good 5 games. We thought Larry Borom had a really good last year. Like, we don't know, you know what I mean? Like, who else has really stood out? Or like defensively, probably only Jalen Johnson, as it stands. Brisker and Gordon are young. They haven't looked great. Gordon has obviously looked better. No one at the linebacker level looks like a cornerstone. The pass rush, again, Travis Gibson, his floor is very high. I think at his floor, he could be a really good rotational 3rd-round pass rush type guy. That's valuable. But I'm talking about like blue chip cornerstone. Here's what you build on. You have Justin Fields and potentially Braxton Jones. Monty's a running back. If we pay him $7-8 million a year, I'm not upset, but I'm also not upset if we don't pay him. He's a running back. That is what it is. Darnell, I think he's showing us that he's not really a wide receiver 1. Could he be a really good wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3? Absolutely. Do I consider that like a cornerstone? No. You know what I mean? And it's like, we still have plenty of time left, but yeah, it seems like that is really slim when you talk about building the identity and who you want to move forward. Next off season is going to be, I think, crucial in this rebuild of who you draft, who you sign, where you plug in holes, what you do with Roquan Smith, because he didn't feel like, at least in this defense, like a cornerstone type of guy. I mean, do you have that? Like Braxton Jones, I think is the only other one outside of Justin Fields for me that I'd be like, yup, he's a cornerstone dude.
Yeah, I'd say Jalen Johnson is probably,
and Jalen.
I think he fits that mold. Frank, what they need to do, and this is just, it's tough to ask for, but it has to happen at some point. They gotta find a superstar, a marquee player. When was the last time the Bears had a marquee player? Khalil Mack? They didn't find him. They didn't draft him. They traded for him when he was already good. Absolutely. You think about guys, right? But I mean, I'm even talking on offense, Frank. Like the wide receiver, they can't produce a wide receiver. You look at guys like Justin Jefferson. I mean, he's a 1st-round pick, granted, but nobody thought that he was going to be that, the best wide receiver in the league right now. Nobody thought Devontae Adams in the 2nd round was. But those good teams find those guys. Yeah, I want to see if Ryan Poles can identify superstars. Your team isn't going to win a lot without marquee players. You look at the Chiefs, the Bills, all those teams, man. Unless you're coached by the greatest coach of all time and can just churn out good players, good to very great players left and right, build offensive lines and things like that, that's great. but the Bears have not had an offensive marquee player drafted in I don't even know if you can really say since like Walter Payton, maybe. Like it's
Jack, the three that came to mind, and this may be a bit of a stretch with at least one of them, but these are the three on the offensive end that came to mind. Alshon Jeffrey.
Yep.
Matt Forte.
Yeah.
Which I think are two shoo-ins. You have to. But then the other one was Johnny Knox, right?
Yeah.
Who else even comes close that were drafted by the Bears? Whether even offensive linemen. Like you think of like Gabe Karimi was a bust. Granted, he got hurt, so it is what it is. But like Kevin White never really touched the field. Like all of these early draft picks on offense never worked out.
Yeah.
Rex Grossman.
Yep.
Was bad.
And
Dude, you know what's funny? I was looking at Rex Grossman's stats the other day. I don't know why he was on my mind the other day. And I was like, you know what? He had that one good year. That one quote unquote good year. He threw like 28 picks, dude. I didn't realize it was really a bad year.
Dude, you go back in hindsight, you look and it's just they just don't find the right guy. They have the right intentions, but they're just not able to just figure it out, to find those right pieces to build to build around. And it's
But you know what, too, though, Jack? I will say, for as much grief as I've given Olin Kreutz, because he's annoyed me highly over the last couple of years, the one thing he has always said that I thought he hit the head, he hit it right on the money. And he was never blaming anyone. He was just calling it as he saw it, and it was correct. They've never really invested in the offense. Think about when they signed Julius Peppers. That was a top 5 defense already. Why the fuck are you giving J-Pep $160 million or whatever it was? Even like Khalil Mack, I get it to a degree, but that was already a top 10 defense in a league when that's good enough. We didn't necessarily need Mack. Like, did it make a difference for that 1 year? Absolutely, because then they went from like good to super elite. I totally get it, but again, super elite defenses that doesn't win you championships today. We need to do that on the offensive end, whether it's drafting and signing that player to a major deal, solidifying your future, or fucking trading 2 firsts for Tyreek Hill. I don't mean literally us. I mean, when that time comes to make that splash in free agency or a trade, it has to be the offensive side of the football. It can't be defense anymore.
Right. Right. I mean, you look at guys that got traded this offseason or signed, Christian Kirk, Hollywood Brown, like guys like that. Like the Bears are never, you don't even expect the Bears to be in on that. I think that's why it was so surprising when the Bears got Brandon Marshall. But the only reason they did that, Frank, is because Jay Cutler wanted him. That was the only reason they traded for him. Like, it's not like the GM was looking out there and was like, you know what? We need some Brandon Marshall in here. He's like, no. Jay Cutler went to him and said, I'm tired of throwing to fucking bums. Get me my guy. And he did. And it was exactly like Derek Carr and Devontae Adams, even though obviously Brandon Marshall was never that good, but he was a very, very good player while he was here. It's just the Bears just are seemingly unable to find top tier guy. Like you mentioned Alshon Jeffrey and Matt Forte. I would argue people don't even remember who those people are outside of Chicago. Maybe Matt Forte, because he was he was
popular in fantasy. Yeah,
he was a very good fantasy player, absolutely. But like Alshon Jeffrey, like I guarantee you, people probably don't even think of him because he was he was good, but he was never like a true superstar. And like a Cooper Kupp. Like the Bears, God forbid they ever have a player like that. Or Frank, like that's kind of what I'm saying in terms of why I'm a little bit worried about Ryan Poles and his ability to evaluate the offense. Velus Jones, good for him getting his first touchdown. That was awesome. I thought that was great. Why is he not involved in the offense more? Why is he not playing not every single down, but he should be a featured receiver. Right? Yeah. Like he should be a part of this offense. You had an opportunity to get George Pickens, who looks like a legit
just as good
stud,
as we thought he was, yeah.
Or Alec Pierce, who, did he have a rough first game of his career? Of course he did. That's sometimes that happens, but you look at that game against Denver, and I mean he's making catches. The announcers are like, what? Like Kirk Herbstreit was literally, how did he do that? Like, that's going to haunt you if those two guys are really fucking good, because you needed to get a cornerback Granted, which this team definitely did need. Can't have Kindle Vildor out there. I know he made a good play, but he's not very good. And you needed another safety, but do you need them ahead of those types of guys to help out your quarter? Like, these are the things that are going to start building against Ryan Poles, and those are the types of guys that Bears fans are going to keep an eye on and be like, why did we not draft these guys? To when you're trying to build something with your quarterback. And I think that's where you and I, after the first draft day, or second one, whatever, we're a little disappointed when, I mean, granted, they got a receiver, like I said, in Velus Jones. He's a little bit older. Who cares? Doesn't matter at this point. But you and I were disappointed because the whole thing you and I want to know, and every Bears fan wanted to know this offseason, is Justin Fields the franchise quarterback? Is he that guy?
Yeah.
And you almost are handcuffing him by not drafting two guys that could have really helped him out.
Yeah, but you know what, though? I will say I'm shifting this year because I do think an identity is being formed on offense. I think Getsy's starting to get more comfortable. I think Justin, I mean, dude, I'm watching this all 22. Jack, I swear to God, stats be damned. Can I just say this too? For people, I'm getting real sick of people. There are other people who do podcasts about the Bears or like put up clips and I see and they're like, how low have we set the bar if we're excited about a 200-yard game? Dude, I don't give a fuck about stats. Like if you're not at least watching some all 22 or like watching film after the fact, even if it's the broadcast view again, I don't care about what you're saying. We're not in a position to judge him just based off stats right now. It's asinine. Anyway, I had to say that. I
agree.
Get off my chest. But dude, that was the most decisive I've seen Justin. I mean, he looked goddamn good. He stepped up in the pocket a few more times that I even remembered on first watch. He felt the pass rush, and then his comments after the fact and saying, you know what, I'm finally starting to learn that I have to get into my own rhythm. Things aren't as fast as my eyes are making them seem because these 300-pounders are just as fast as me. I can slow the game down mentally. And that was why I hearkened back to like last year. That was why last year wasn't such a lost year for me in regards to Justin Fields, because those reps mattered for that. Those mental reps of seeing things, of being a part, of having you on film, of seeing what you could have done differently, that still matters. And that's why like the injury last year was disappointing, but then also the whole Andy Dalton thing was really annoying. But I said all that to say this year I'm really looking at it as like his talent, unless he played every game like it was the Packers game where he just had, or not even that, probably the Texans game where it was like, that was just a bad Justin Fields game. You get 17 games of that, we may have to look at a different quarterback. But you look at the other games, he just has so much talent, Jack, that like, how can you give up on that kid after 2 seasons and then realistically like a season and a half of starts? He's too talented. So like, I'm almost viewing it as like, first, continue to make this progress. I want to see the visual progress. I don't care about the stats. 2, continue to show everyone that it's the weapons around you that are at fault and it's not you. Well, or hopefully like N'Keal Harry winds up being a thing. Hopefully the guys that are being, that can step up can be, Velus Jones gets more reps. But if they are bad, just continue to do your thing. And I'm almost looking at it like, Justin, just survive this year, continue to get better. And then it brings me to what you were saying about Poles. Then I'm going to judge Poles more about next year. It's so hard for me to judge him with this year, dude. He got dealt a bad hand with contracts and such. And I don't want to go back on our word because we applauded him for shedding some of these contracts. And that's a big part of the reason why he couldn't do much with free agency or even like trading for a Tyreek Hill. The only place I fault him, and I don't know if I'm ever going to not fault him unless he drafts some good receivers next year, was Pickens and Pierce were both there where we wanted them.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. You do have to remind yourself sort of what this offseason was like for Ryan Poles coming in. I don't know if those doubts are going to leave me because it seems to be, I mean, his priority seems to be different than my priorities in terms of what we talked about before the draft happened, in terms of what we were ranking as key building blocks. And granted, I'm obviously not a highly paid GM of a National Football League team. That's Ryan Poles' job, and he sees things I don't. He has access to information that you and I don't. But I just want to say one last thing, and then we'll talk about week 6 here, and we'll talk Bears, Washington Commanders Thursday Night Football first. Giving up on Fields, it's the same shit that pissed me off with Bears fans when it first started happening with Mitch. And whether it was 2018, 2019, it wasn't like you and I were super fans, but it was like Bears fans have been so conditioned to just assume that every quarterback they draft is going to be bad because it's the Bears and they can't develop quarterbacks, which is fair, right? They haven't really done it. But it's just like, you got to give people some time. Let Mitch prove that he's not the guy. And he did. That's exactly what we were that game in Atlanta when he got benched for Nick Foles. Frank, that was it, right? That was the moment you and I were both like, all right, I think this guy's done. I think we're done with this guy. Let's move on. It's time. Justin Fields, I mean, even some of his worst games, he still made some really good passes. And there was that guy that was going around. I apologize. I forget his name now, but he had a really good kind of media tour. He was going on radio stations and things like that and talking about some of the positives from that Texans game. It wasn't all Justin Fields being bad. It's the cast surrounding him. And that was something we talked about with Mitch, right? Mitch had never really had weapons around him, right? Like he never really had go-to guys except for Allen Robinson when he was still Allen Robinson. But it wasn't like he was surrounded by an all-star cast and Anthony Miller flamed out in the league. Like there were separate circumstances. Justin Fields hasn't really shown me that he can't develop into a good to great quarterback. He just has. Yeah. His ability to run with the football is maybe he's the third best runner in the league, maybe fourth if you count Josh Allen. I'd probably go Josh.
Probably year 1. Josh is 2. Jalen Hurts 3. Justin 4. Who else is a better runner than him?
That's what I'm saying. That's a special asset to have.
Yeah. No, I agree, but I also think, something that needs to be said, and we've said this when it came to Mitch, because even when we were off the wagon, I unless it's a Josh Rosen, like it's clear, and Justin has come nowhere near that. Right. And I don't think Mitch did either. Granted, we were off and we were ready to move on from that's fine, but I want to go through a whole rookie contract because what if you give up on Jalen Hurts after year 1 or year 2? That is, maybe he doesn't go anywhere else and becomes great. You may just ruin his career completely. But like these guys, it takes time to develop quarterbacks, man. It just is what it is. And we said this when it came to Burrow and Herbert. They almost spoiled the fan where people think that quarterbacks just come in and now, I mean, Burrow's struggling this year a little bit. Herbert doesn't look as good as he did the first 2 years. Like defenses find things out and there's sort of ebbs and flows, especially for a young quarterback. It is what it is. It happens. And again, Justin hasn't showed me anything where I'm like, oh no, I want to move on to a new quarterback while he's still on his rookie deal. That's insane.
And he was also in the worst offensive system in football last year. I mean, like let's
has the worst supporting cast this year.
Yeah, let's not play games and forget how bad Matt Nagy was and it wasn't. And it's great that we have those sample sizes of Mitch, of Andy Dalton, of Nick Foles playing in that offense because it didn't work for anybody. So like, why can we not just accept that Justin Fields may need a little more time learning a new system that might actually fit his strengths? Because Frank, and something I want to kill, the thought that the coaches don't trust Justin Fields, they're not letting him. Where the fuck was those comments yesterday on Sunday night on Sunday? When he's on the Vikings and they're just letting him rip the fucking ball. And Justin and Matt Eberflus said it today being Tuesday, Justin Fields is starting to take command of the offense. It's the 5th game going into the 6th game of this offense. It's going to take some time. He had a full offseason as the starter, right? He didn't have to worry about battling it out with Andy Dalton throwing to a bunch of fucking scrubs. Like, he's the guy. Give him some time. He's starting to take command, and that goes to what you just said a little bit earlier. That was the most decisive you saw Justin Fields look.
He looked fucking good, man.
Ever. And he looked like he knew where he was going. He looked like he knew where to put the ball. and he trusted Darnell Mooney to make a fucking incredible catch. I'm excited to see what he does on Thursday, Frank.
I agree. No, I totally agree. And I think my last comment there, and we can get into week 6, is you hear other people around the league talk about, being in a new offense. Davante Adams, granted different position, but the way he reads a defense is very much like a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers made that clear. They were on the it took Davante 2 or 3 years outside of the dropsies that he had for his first couple of seasons, was because that's what great quarterbacks expect you to do. They expect you to see the same exact thing that they see, in case there's a hot route or just you're on the same page with what the defensive coverage is. And he talked about, he's like, this new offense with McDaniels, I feel like I'm learning Mandarin right now. Like, so you think about, and we touched on this, we sort of both harken back to our watch guide. Like, Justin is in his 3rd offense in 3 seasons. So the fact that anyone thought he was just, now granted, watchability, I still have my complaints from the first 4 games. It is what it is. I want to be fun to watch. There will never be an excuse for me to have a team that's awful to watch. But in terms of like getting the identity and like people being on the same page, just like you said, it was game 5. Like, I would never expect them to put up 30 points right out the gate. They don't even have the weapons to do that, let alone the experience with each other. So, yeah, I mean, people will overreact, way too much. And I also think like people sort of take criticism too far in the sense of like, and I guess an overall feel. We were both on record. Well, I don't know. Were you with me that one? I was on record saying Justin had a bad game against the Texans. It is what it is. There were other things that let him down, but he had a bad game. And I'm going to comment when Justin has a bad game. That doesn't mean I take that thought and say, well, looks like he's fucking going.
Yep. Like welcome to Chicago, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud.
Exactly. It's silly that people just make these ultimate conclusions, but then you also look silly because in the next week he has a good game and you're like, maybe this kid's the one. You just last week were talking about getting rid of it. Like, you can't have these sort of ultimate outcome based thoughts after 1 game or 2 games or whatever. But I also just, the biggest thing, and you've touched on this more than anyone that I know, and I think you hit it on the head every time you do, is we're not used to having young quarterbacks. Like, we had Rex. We didn't treat Jay like he was a young guy. We came in, people act like he was just this Hall of Famer already, and he was just going to make Johnny Knox and Devin Hester the best receiving core in the world. And then we had Mitch. Like, Chicago doesn't really get young quarterbacks. So I think as a fan base, we're just like confused. Like, what do you mean grow? What do you mean they have to learn? Like, I don't think we as a whole understand that. Like, we don't get that concept.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you look at just some of the plays Justin was making in this game. Like, it happened in the first game, and it happened in this game as well. I'm sure it's happened a bunch more. I just can't really think of them like right off the top of my head. But when was the last time that like the Bears would get penalized or they'd get sacked by like 10 yards, and then they'd make up? The Bears are able to make up those yardage. They're able to do that now. And he made a great throw to Ihmir Smith-Marsette. It was a really, really good throw. And you think about the fastball he threw to Cole Kmet, he's starting to understand how to throw the football and when to do certain things, when to loft it, when to give your guy downfield a chance in Darnell Mooney instead of when to just fire and rip it into Cole Kmet to make sure he's able to catch it. Yep. He's starting to pick those things up in this offense. And I think we're going to continue to see that growth. And I think this is a great segue to just straight up talk about the Thursday night game at home against Washington. Frank, I expect the Bears to absolutely dominate this game from start to finish. I'm not saying they're going to go out and score 45 points and hold the Commanders to 0, but I think that the Bears should be able to control this football game completely. Carson Wentz, limited 2 practices in a row with a right shoulder strain. He hasn't looked all that. I mean, he looks like Carson Wentz, right? Everyone is complaining, and Colts fans, things like that, about how, oh my God, we traded Carson Wentz for Matt Ryan. Carson Wentz is 1-4, guys. His team is terrible, and he has good weapons, right? Like, he has some really good weapons to work with. Frank, this Commanders team is terrible. The Bears should absolutely win this game.
See, I don't know about. I'm picking them to win. I think the Bears will win this game. I don't know about dominate though. Antonio Gibson is a pretty good running back. Brian Robinson, he's still recovering, but we can't stop the run though. That's the thing. Is like, and not for nothing. I know Carson can be streaky. We know that he's so when it all adds up to it, he's a pretty average or maybe even a tad below average quarterback. But Jalen Johnson will be back, is what it's looking like. So he's probably going to be on Terry. Who the fuck is going to stop Jahan Dotson if he plays? Their receiving core is really fucking good.
It is. I worry more about Curtis Samuel than I really do anyone else because he's that quick.
That Swiss Army knife type.
And he's back to full health too. It's a good offense, Frank. Don't get me wrong. But I think the pass rush can get home, right? The offensive line, you're going to get to see Charles Leno Jr. again. We'll see about I hate that Robert Quinn has these, like, this is his career, where he has this fucking incredible season. You're like, there we go, superstar pass rusher. And then the next year he does fucking nothing. It's so weird to me.
It is very weird.
I want to see Dominique Robinson take over for Al-Qadim Muhammad. He did 55. He just doesn't give you anything. He just has. Justin Jones has looked really damn good, and that was a really good signing. But like Roquan Smith, Eddie Jackson, these guys who were supposed to be your leaders, they were invisible on Sunday against the Vikings. This run defense should not be this bad, but it's because the linebackers are so bad. Nick Morrow, I thought he could be a sneaky good signing. He just doesn't really offer a whole lot. Yeah, and Roquan he just looks so out of place in this defense. It's just not. It just doesn't seem to be a very good fit right now. That being said, I still think the Bears are the better team, right? I think they're going to be able to run the football in this Washington defense. I really do. And I think Justin is going to have his best game of the season. I think it's sort of what he's been building up to. It's a short week. You're at home. It's against a pretty bad defense. I don't know. This could be a breakout game for him. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just saying I think it could be.
And that's what I was sort of touching on. In our immediate reaction pod was this has to be a catapult game. Like what happened in that second half against the Vikings has to unleash something in this offense. It has to build some sort of momentum. Otherwise, it just was sort of a lucky second. I don't want to say lucky, but like flash in the pan type of second half. And some of the things that I want to see, we sort of touched defensively. Pass rush might be able to get home. Hopefully, the linebacker Jack Sanborn just has to get more reps. I know he's an undrafted guy, but like, what the fuck do we have to lose? Let's see if he can be an actual player, moving forward. But offensively, again, I need to see you. You touched on this earlier. I need to see Velus Jones out there. He should be back in shape. He's back. This is third week back from the IR. Dante Pettis should not be getting reps over him. I don't care if Pettis is a better route runner or a better blocker. I don't give a fuck what your excuse is. Get Velus Jones out there. He's your third round pick. He's the only receiver you picked. Put him out there. You have to. You can't. There's no good excuse or good reason to have Pettis out there. I think the same for EQ. Any reps that Velus takes from Pettis, the rest of those Pettis reps go to EQ. Pettis should be a special teamer. I don't care how thin we are at receiver. He can't be out there any longer. And yeah, I just think the biggest thing that I want to see from this offense, they have to get started earlier because what happened in the Vikings game was exactly what I said in the Niners game. Was it like, is this by design that we're starting slow and running the ball more and we don't get to the misdirection and things until the second half? Or is like Luke Getsy just being conservative, sort of keeping it close and then trying to make plays towards the end, which is like, if you're a playoff team playing a team that's better than you, I get it. We're not a playoff team. Everyone is better than us. Let's unleash it a little bit. Let's fucking get these boys out the cage and let's go. Like, let's just free it all up and play. So I want to see Luke Getsy get more and more aggressive earlier and earlier as the weeks go on. This is the prime time to do that. Just like you said, this could, depending on if the defense shows up and if we can continue to make progress offensively, this can be a little bit of a shootout on Thursday night, Jack.
That's what you hope for from these short weeks, those sloppy games, and you want to see. I get the Bears aren't designed right to score 45 points right now, Frank, but goddamn, at some point you want to see it happen a little bit, right? Like you look at some of the bad teams around the league. The Lions, I mean, great that the Lions have an established quarterback, and I would argue better weapons right now than the Bears do. But you see those bad teams like the Seahawks and the Falcons even like able to just put up these points and things like the Bears. Like at some point you have to show that you can score touchdowns. Like you just have to, like you said, open it up a little bit. Don't be so predictable with the running on first down every single time. If you're gonna establish the run, that's fine. But then try play action. See what happens. Not every drive has to end in points, right? Like you saw it kind of with the Raiders last night too. You know, they get down. It's 4th and 1, and then you take a deep shot. Like it's okay that if they turn the ball over, but at least you're trying to take those deep shots. You're right. I want to see some aggressiveness. What do you have to lose at this point? You're 2-3. You're at home. It's against another bad team. Why not take some chances? Why not give it a shot?
Jack, I swear to God, if we run a play action fake on first down against any team, there will be 3 wide receivers wide open.
Yeah.
Because I can almost guarantee you, when I watch the all 22, I only watch the pass plays. I don't really give a shit about the run game right now.
Right.
But if you were to watch, I almost guarantee the safeties, the corners, and the linebackers are all overcommitting on the run on first down because we do it every first down.
Every time.
Like,
every
give
time.
me 1 or 2. I'd like more than that, but just give me 1 or 2, and I guarantee there will be multiple open receivers to a point where Justin may like freeze and get sacked because he's like, "Holy shit! Why is everyone wide open? Did they blow the play dead?" Like that's how wide open people would be.
Well, and you kind of see that sometimes happen with Justin, where he almost air mills a throw, or like because he's like, oh shit, I got him. He's wide open. I got him. But no, I agree. And then the last thing I wanted to say is that there I agree with you. There should be a very clear hierarchy of targets. It should be Darnell Mooney is your number 1 guy, clear and obvious. Cole Kmet is your number 2. That's who you should be looking for next. N'Keal Harry, maybe.
EQ. It's got to be EQ.
No. I'd go Velus. Sorry, Velus as your 3rd option. St. Brown, N'Keal Harry. Dante Pettis is like down here, and it has to be like that. And I know it might seem obvious to your opponents, but or at the very least get David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert both involved. They have to find a way. Khalil Herbert is way too fucking good of a player to be sitting on the bench every other play when Montgomery is in, because David Montgomery looked fucking good on Sunday. You have to give him the ball, but you also have to find a way to get Khalil Herbert involved. You just have to.
I agree, but I will say, though, Jack, they're going to have to get aggressive early in order to make that happen because teams are stacking the box.
Yep.
The reason that Justin Fields had so much success in that second half is because they took advantage of 9-man boxes. He did what he was supposed to do.
Right.
But in order to lessen that, in order to have 7-man boxes like normal, or even 8, you need to throw the ball early and often, and that'll open up the run. I feel like that's not talked about enough. I know everyone's the run will open up the pass. Sometimes the pass opens up the run too. You lighten those boxes. You make them commit. Like you they have 6 secondary pieces out there instead of 4 linebackers or whatever. Like you can sort of play it nickel, dime, whatever. But now you have a lighter box in there. Now Khalil Herbert is running over a corner or an extra safety instead of another linebacker. Like
right.
So that's why I want to see Getsy get aggressive and get aggressive early. And I think he will. I don't think, again, I think people have been a little harsher on Getsy, and we've been a little bit harsh, but even than us, I don't think he's been bad. I think he's just been conservative. There's a difference between that. He's calling things within the flow of a game. He hasn't been bad at calling plays. He's been bad at knowing when to be aggressive, I feel like.
Yeah. And one thing else I'm curious to watch for, Frank, and I haven't seen anything to suggest otherwise, is the offensive line configuration. Like I said, I haven't seen anything to suggest that Sam Mustipher won't be your starting center again, or that Lucas Patrick won't be at left guard. You'll have the same 5 guys. And as long as the mistakes don't pile up like that. That's what I'm looking for. Where is the accountability if Sam Mustipher keeps you can't have it. You can't have it if you're a building team, if you're looking for key pieces. You can't have that. You can't have guys skating away thinking that when they make a mistake, it's 100% okay. I'm not saying that he should be cut right then and there if it happens again, but at some point you have to say this is unacceptable. I'm not having this anymore with our offense. So sounds like I'm going Bears. Sounds like you're going Bears. We'll have them at 500 going into a little bit longer of a week. Let's get into the rest of the NFL, Frank. There's some good matchups here or there. The first bye week for teams. The Raiders, the Texans, the Lions, and the Titans are all on byes. So NFL season now feels like it's fully in swing. It's very weird that we're already at week 6.
Dude, it's so strange. I almost forgot bye weeks existed until I started to set my fantasy lineups, and I was like, holy shit, there are bye weeks.
Yep. I was excited. I was like, all right, here we go. Damian Pierce, I'm ready to lock and oh, okay.
Yeah, it threw me for a loop.
But there's a really so we'll get into it. Sunday's games, obviously. Baltimore at the Giants. The Giants obviously coming off of a very good win. Man, Frank, that's gonna be a question you and I will be pondering for years to come about the Bears' option to get Brian Daboll and bring him in.
But I also wonder how I need there to be some reporting or discovery, like how possible that even was. He was linked to the Giants very early.
Pretty much from the get-go. He had the connection with the GM. And
this wasn't a Bruce Arians, like he's begging to come to Chicago and we said, no, let's pick the Canadian guy. Like, this wasn't that. But to your point, he was our number one choice. That's all I'll say. But
yeah, a very, very good team. But they are hosting Baltimore. And Baltimore didn't play great last week, but it's still Baltimore. They're down a couple of receivers. Rashad Bateman was hurt, but Devin Duvernay has come out of nowhere to be a very efficient player. Frank, I'm going to go Baltimore. I'm going to go Baltimore on the road. I'm going the quarterback match. You know how I do things. I when I'm not sure, I'm going to go based off the quarterback matchup. And right now, I know that Baltimore has the better quarterback right now.
I'm going Baltimore too. I don't think very much analysis needs to be done on this game. I'm going Baltimore.
Then we got Jacksonville at Indy. Frank, I struggle with this one. I don't know what to do. So I'm going to go Indy. They're at home. They kind of snuck out of Denver with a win. Jacksonville just is having some struggles right now. Trevor Lawrence is not playing the best, and Indy's defense has been pretty good. So I'm going to go Colts. I don't feel super confident, but I'm going to go Colts at home.
I was a little iffy on this, and I actually Googled Indianapolis Colts, and I went to the Wikipedia page, and their owner is Duval County. Listen, the Colts can't beat the Jaguars. I'm going Jaguars.
Fair enough. New England at Cleveland. New England with a very surprising win against Detroit. I thought Detroit was going to go in and there just score points and points and points, and they just were terrible. I'm going to go Cleveland, though. I know Cleveland kind of blew it last week, but, I mean, Nick Chubb has been absolutely on fire right now.
He has been, yeah.
I think this is a game Cleveland should win.
I'm going New England. It could just be them owning Goff. Like I picked them because I knew Bill Belichick just puts a spell on that kid. I don't know what he has on him, but I'd like to also think that defense is starting to turn a corner because they looked. The Lions were the number one offense in the league going into last week. Like I get it that the Lions, they've been bad. They were a really good offense that scored 0 points. That's hard to do in today's NFL, to score 0 points. So and that was more on New England's defense. I don't think Jacoby Brissett is a better quarterback than Jared Goff. I think the Patriots do the same thing, not shut them out. They have a better run game, but I'm going Pats.
The Jacoby Brissett revenge game, Frank. Just keep that in mind. Cincinnati at New Orleans. New Orleans has found their quarterback, Frank. Taysom Hill, baby. I will still never understand how that man is good. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. That being said, I'm gonna go Cincinnati though.
I'm going Cincy as well. Do you remember when we were sort of in the offseason, we didn't have much to talk about and we were sort of talking about other teams just in passing and shit. The Saints are just as weird as we thought they were gonna be. This is a weird team, dude.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
just they're weird.
It's hard to get a gauge on them. So some weeks they look super good, then the next week they look terrible. It's very interesting. Tampa Bay at Pittsburgh. I was gonna go upset here, Frank. I was gonna kind of be sneaky and cute about it with Pittsburgh, but I can't in good faith pick against Tom Brady in this game. Like this, I think Tampa Bay is gonna win this one pretty easily.
I also think it's tough because the Steelers' defense looks bad. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know when's the last time the Steelers have had a really bad defense. They've had some average ones in our lifetime. They look awful.
Yeah.
And the Buccaneers defense, they sort of do that thing where it's like, they're good, but they sort of call off the dog sometimes. But a rookie quarterback, they may give Kenny Pickett some fit. This might be a blowout. I'm going Bucks.
Yeah, it's weird to see the Pittsburgh Steelers at the top of the draft board right now. Like they would, if the season ended today, they would have the number one pick. It makes you kind of think about, Mike Tomlin and what his future may hold in Pittsburgh. Like this kind of may be setting up for not necessarily a rebuild, but maybe just a different voice in the room in terms of where that team is going. Because, like you said, he's a defensive guy. They've always had that defensive spirit. And again, there's still plenty of time for them to turn things around. How many times have we written the Steelers off and they ended up finishing, 8-8, 9-7, things like that. So we'll see, but this is not a game in their favor. The 49ers at Atlanta. Jimmy G apparently has come back to life, and Atlanta is not very good. So I'm going to go with San Francisco.
I'm gonna go with San Fran as well. They're starting to look like a really complete team. But this has the makings to be a pretty fun game.
Yes.
Because the Falcons are fun bad. They're really fun to watch, dude. I have enjoyed them. And Mariota's looked better than I thought.
Better than we expected. Better than you and I have both expected him to.
He looks like a starting quarterback, and I legitimately did not think he was one, and he looks like one this year.
I will say I saw some just fantasy things in regards to target shares and things like that. And with Kyle Pitts barely getting usage and him being hurt this week, everyone expected Drake London's numbers to just soar. But apparently Arthur Smith decided to go with Zacchaeus for some strange reason. Arthur Smith seems like a weird dude. He seems like a guy who's next to get fired. Like it just seems like the next in line. Because things are just so weird down there. I know he'll probably get another year because they expected to be bad, but I would not be surprised if he is on the chopping block pretty soon here. Jets at Green Bay. Frankie, I'm going Jets. Fuck it. I'm going with the Jets. The Packers, I told you, I've been texting you this every single week since the Bears game. The Packers are not that good, and yet they just keep lining up perfect matchups for them to just get guys at the right time and just kind of stack wins. But they're not that good of a team, Frank. And we saw it against the Giants in London. I'm going with the Jets. Zach Wilson looks like he's bringing something to this Jets offense, man. They've been pretty fun. And Breece Hall, I don't know who the fuck had Ken Walker as the number one running back. Come on, man. Breece Hall all the way. Love that guy.
Breece Hall has looked really good the last couple of weeks. Listen, I'm going with the Packers. I'm still not bought in on the Jets. I'm just not. They look good last week. That was one where I was like, that looks like a really solid offense. Zach Wilson still misses some of the easiest throws, like wide open swing passes out of the backfield that could be walked in for a touchdown. And the whole thing with Bridgewater being out, should he not have been out? That whole thing happened. They took him out because he stumbled, apparently, which I didn't see it on film. I think that had more of an effect on what was happening. I don't even remember who the third stringer was. He couldn't move the ball for Miami. I mean, they were dead in the water. I may change my tune if they beat the Packers in that sort of fashion, but I'm not bought in on the Jets.
Jets, Frankie. Minnesota at Miami. Speaking of Miami, who the fuck knows what's happening with their quarterback situation? I'm going Minnesota all the way.
I'm going Minnesota as well, but I think if Teddy plays, which he should, because I don't think he was concussed.
I don't think so either.
And I feel like if we didn't have as much to talk about in the beginning of the episode, we could have talked about the whole concussion thing and we're sort of where it's heading.
And also the the roughing the passer calls that are absolutely getting out of control.
Out of control. That's insane.
What was Deion Jones supposed to do against Tom Brady, Frank? Push him?
What was the other call? It wasn't even the Brady game. It was a different call this
Derek
past
Carr,
week as well.
Derek Carr and the Chiefs.
What the fuck what are you supposed to do here?
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, very strange. I am going Vikings as well. But I think if Teddy plays, that's going to be a barn burner of a game, I think.
It could be a really fun one for sure. Carolina at the Rams. Carolina, who the fuck knows what's happening with their quarterback situation, even with Baker. I mean, they're just wasn't a good outlook. But the Rams, man, they've been bad. They just have not.
No hangover. I told you.
Yeah, they just haven't looked like themselves. But I think this is a get right game for the Rams. They should win this one.
I agree. And if you're the Panthers, put in Matt Corral. What excuse do you not have?
His torn ACL.
That's right. He did tear his ACL.
Yeah.
Who am I? I'm thinking of the Giants. Who was the Giants quarterback they drafted?
No. Sam Howell I think you're thinking of Sam Howell.
That's what I'm thinking of.
For the Commanders. Yeah.
I'm getting all these mid-round quarterbacks mixed
up. They're bad. They're all bad. Well, Malik Willis should. I think he should be playing at this point.
In Tennessee?
Yeah. I think he should.
No. They're still playoff contenders. You can't do that.
You have Derrick Henry. What is Ryan Tannehill really even doing? What does he get?
The last couple of weeks, he's played good.
He sucks. Fuck Tennessee. They're terrible. Arizona at Seattle. Frankie. Upset City. I'm going Seattle, baby. Geno, I'm buying in. Listen, man, the Cardinals are about, it's kind of what you were saying with the Saints, about as weird as we thought they'd be. I thought the Cardinals would be way better than this, and they are just not in sync right now.
I'm really curious to see like the Athletic article that comes out when Cliff Kingsbury eventually gets fired, whether it's after this year or in 2 years. He has to be a really poor leader because it's clear that like his offensive mind is really good, but they just look so discombobulated and undisciplined every single week. Every single week. It's like, what is happening? There's too much talent on that team, even with injuries and such, for them to play that way. And I'm not even saying like win, lose, or draw. Like forget the outcome. Just look at what you're seeing on the field as the product of them. They're too talented to play that way. It's very weird. I'm going with the Seahawks as well, though.
I think the problem was giving Kyler the keys when you knew that there were some things going on behind the scenes, because he just doesn't look like he makes a lot of mistakes, Frank, that he shouldn't be making.
But it's also it's one of those things though, Jack, where it's like I feel like we were with this with Jay Cutler, where people wanted to get rid of him, but it's like realistically,
what do you do?
Where do you go from there? It's hard to upgrade when you're a middle of the pack team and you have a good or pretty good quarterback that maybe is never going to be elite, but they're good enough to win you some game. Like that's a tough position to be in for them. But again, just like you said, does that mean you just give him the keys and give him the big contract that you gave him? I don't know. I mean, it's.
I will say fantasy wise, it's nice having Hollywood Brown because that was a really good trade for them. Good on them. But no, man, like I want to stick on Seattle just for a second longer because I think it's worth kind of talking about. It's something that Frank and I have been talking about for, I don't know, since we started this podcast. Was Russell Wilson really holding this offense back? I don't know, Frank. I mean, Geno stepped in, looks like he's cooking the same way that he was. I mean, and Russ looks bad in Denver, Frankie. He looks really bad.
But it was something that me and you had said, though. It's like, it seemed like every time they tried to take Russ, off the leash, if you will, like open up the offense, he started to look bad. And there comes a point where it's like, oh, let him cook. Why do you run the ball so much? And it's like, after about 8 years, the coaching staff kind of knows who they have. Like knows like there's a reason that they're doing that.
Right.
And I know there's going to be some idiot that's like, well, you're saying that about Justin. Justin Fields is in year 2. You let him make all the mistakes that you can't. But when you're a playoff contender in year fucking 8, yes, you do what you can to win the game. And if that means running the ball 40 times, you run the ball 40 times. But like, yeah, they did that for so many years for a reason. Like that was the formula that got them there with an elite defense. I mean, that what was it, 2014, whatever year with the LOB. That was an historically great defense. That was like a top 10 defense of all time.
It was one of the best defenses of all time,
That's
going up against one of the best offenses in the league in the Peyton Manning-led Broncos, and that's why they won that Super Bowl, because it was just.
But I also think, it's a very unique situation with Russ. The way that we get annoyed with him being so disingenuous, his teammates feel that too. You look at the way they tweet about him. Richard Sherman can't stand that guy. And it's very rare that people are that outspoken about a former teammate, especially when they didn't have spats while they were in, or it's not like Russ talk shit about them on their way out. He just did, but people feel that.
Yep. I mean, we owe an apology
to not even being around him.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we owe an apology to Geno Smith, because he's been balling. He hasn't won a lot of games, granted, but
I mean, at this point, it doesn't matter. He can sort of flame out, and I think he's bought himself 6 or 7 years at least as a backup in this league after performing the way he has after 5 weeks.
I think I agree. A game that I cannot believe has not been flexed into Sunday night or Monday. I don't know if you can do Monday night, but I don't know how this wasn't a primetime game. I know it's game of the week, obviously, but Buffalo at Kansas City. I mean, come on, man. What more can you ask for? Frank, I'm breaking our rule. I'm breaking our rule. I'm doing it. I'm going Buffalo this week, Frankie.
I want to.
No, come on. Join me. Revenge game for Josh Allen.
It is the revenge
game. The Chiefs looked like shit last week. Or not shit, but they didn't look very good against the Raiders.
Yeah, but the Raiders always play them tough. Listen, the Bills been playing lollipop offenses, and everyone's like, their defense is fucking number. Listen, y'all haven't played Kermit, okay? You haven't played the best quarterback in the goddamn league. No, I don't know. I just feel like it's something that the Chiefs have on the Bills. It's just that little, I don't know what it is. We've seen this before. I feel like we've seen this before, where it was like, Brady just always got past Peyton. It was just something, and not all literally every time, but it was just that one thing where it's like teams felt even, the quarterbacks feel even, but it's just something. And that's the feel that I get with the Bills and the Chiefs.
That's a very, very good way to describe this. This is basically your new Brady and Manning, except in this case, both quarterbacks are extremely likable. Frank, I know I've tried to talk myself into it every single year, every single time I watch Patrick Mahomes. What if the Bears had been competent and drafted the right quarterback? Would they have been able to develop him in the right way? I don't know. But you look at the way he fucking plays football, and he just he's almost getting sacked, and you're like, oh, they got him, and then he just fucking underhands it and turns into a fucking 12-yard game. It's just like, God damn it. Why? Why can the Bears just not have that luck to find that guy? Why did we not hire Andy Reid? Right? Why was Andy Reid not the Chicago Bears head coach? Why didn't that happen, huh?
Wait, who was that still Lovey? When he got fired from Philly?
When was he hired? 2013?
I don't even know. My timeline with that is so off. His time in Philly seems so long ago. Because, I mean, he was in Philly in the early 2000s beating the Bears in the playoffs with Donovan McNabb, right?
Wasn't?
In 01?
No. Chip Kelly was 2012. So Andy Reid would have been gone by then. Yeah, so 20. No. He was hired in 2013.
And he was with the Eagles up until then, or did he take time off?
No. He was with the Eagles in 2012, and then he got hired by the Chiefs.
By the quarterback at the end by that point.
2012 would have been Nick Foles. He was their third-round pick. Here, you know what? This is too intriguing now. They went 4-12, which is why he got fired.
Okay.
Which is kind of crazy to think about that they got rid of Andy Reid, because you think about how immediately steps into Kansas City. It was Mike Vick. It was the Mike Vick resurgence year. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I would say Nick Foles didn't ring a bell, but Mike Vick does.
Was
Alex Smith immediately their quarterback in Kansas City?
In Kansas City, yep. They traded him
and he
because
fucking unlocked so much. Oh my God, he looked good in that offense.
Yeah, and so 2013 is the year that not only did we pass on Bruce Arians, the Bears, but they also hired. No, wait, hold on.
2012 is when we hired Trestman, right?
2013. The 2013 season was Mark Trestman's first year.
Okay.
So instead of Andy Reid and now Bruce Arians, they went with Mark Trestman.
But just like you say, when you look back at these times, we're always like a fucking year late
step
on
behind.
something.
Yep.
We're always a step behind.
Well, you think about it too, Frank. Would Andy Reid have really not been able to make good use of Jay Cutler?
Would Bruce Arians? But that's all
I mean,
Bruce
if
talked
you
about
make
after
Alex
interviews
Smith
and such. He's like, I will make Jay Cutler a top 5 quarter. Like, he was so high on it. Yeah, well, the Bears
Old
fucking suck.
Old road. I'm still going Buffalo. You can't convince me that the Bills
I'm going Chiefs.
I'm breaking our rule, and I'll probably look foolish for doing so, but we'll see. Dallas at Philadelphia. That's a Sunday night game. I'm not sure if Dak is supposed to play.
I don't think he is yet.
But I'm going Philly either way. I don't really care who's starting. Philly's too, and Nick Sirianni is just making Frank Reich look like an ass cloud. To be honest with you, Nick Sirianni. I remember we made fun of him that first couple press conferences.
Well, he was so nervous. That's
why
that was hilarious.
But he looks like he's having a lot of fucking fun right now.
Yeah, I'm going Philly as well. But that I think it's gonna be a close one. That Cowboys defense is fucking nasty. Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
Micah Parsons might be, when it's all said and done, one of the best defensive ends we've ever seen in our life. That kid is fucking special.
And he doesn't even play defensive end all the time. He plays linebacker. It's wild, man.
He's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And, eventually the Cowboys will figure out that Tony Pollard is a better running back.
I don't get it.
Zeke.
And it's not that Zeke even looks bad. It's just he didn't have that burst anymore. Like a short yardage back on third down, he'll get you the 3 or 4 yards. But Tony Pollard's just more explosive than him.
Speaking of Russ, Monday Night Football game, Denver.
Out of prime time, please.
It's week 6 and Denver is back in Monday Night Football.
Fuck, dude.
Yeah. I'm going Chargers. Let's just close this out.
I'm going Chargers. The Chargers are going to win the game 15-12.
Yeah. I'm going Chargers, but it's going to be a rough game. That'll do it for this week's edition of the Bear With Us podcast. We appreciate you listening through all the way. This has definitely been a longer podcast than I think Frank and I intended it to be, but it was a lot of fun. We had a really good time. We appreciate you listening. Frank, Thursday night. It's only a couple nights away. Let's go Bears.
Fuck yeah. Later, Jackie. Later, everybody.